The National Desk, America's News, now.
As presidential campaigns ramp up their efforts to win over voters before November, the surprising results of a new poll about one of the most important issues in the 2024 race. Uvalde, Texas finally released hundreds of documents from the 2022 Robb Elementary shooting after years of pressure. Why family members of victims are upset. A dangerous storm is developing in the Atlantic, where it is expected to make landfall as early as tonight. This is the National Desk, America's News. Now, I'm Dee Dee Gatton. It's great to be here with you. And right now, an escalation in the Middle East as the U.S. is sending one of their guided missile submarines to the area while repositioning the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln. U.S. and Western allies are preparing for possible attacks from Iran or its proxies in the Middle East. According to Fox News, Israel could be struck in less than 24 hours. The White House's John Kirby says the U.S. has prepared for what could be significant attacks this week. This as tensions continue to escalate following the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran last month. France, Germany, and the UK all warned Iran and its allies today against retaliatory actions. Crews are building a security perimeter ahead of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago that starts on August 19th. Several streets were scheduled to close starting today as the construction begins. Law enforcement has been preparing for threats. The Chicago police superintendent saying he's worked extensively with the Secret Service. Some groups in Chicago expect there could be up to 25,000 protesters at the DNC. The House task force looking into the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump has started investigating. Lawmakers have requested documents and briefings from several agencies. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe, Attorney General Merrick Garland, and FBI Director Christopher Wray have received letters. The task force asked for briefings by August 16th. And new tonight, Trump wants $100 million in damages from the Justice Department stemming from the FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago property. He's filed a claim arguing the August 2022 raid, which was approved as part of the classified documents case, was inappropriate and harmed his reputation. The documents case was dismissed on a technicality by a judge last month. Tech billionaire Elon Musk is expected to host a conversation with Trump on his social media platform tonight. Musk made that announcement in a post on X last night, saying the conversation would be guaranteed entertainment. He also tells X users to submit questions or comments. The conversation takes place on X Spaces at 8 p.m. Eastern. Musk fully put his support behind Trump following the July assassination attempt. Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz, is starting his first solo fundraising tour this week. According to a campaign official, he'll begin tomorrow in California and will then travel to Colorado and Massachusetts on Wednesday, followed by Rhode Island and New York on Thursday. Walz will stop in Los Angeles first to speak before a labor group before heading to Newport Beach. While Vice President Harris is attempting to seize momentum in her campaign, critics are asking what her official stances are on a variety of policies. As the National Desk Matt Gelka tells us, Harris has only revealed glimpses on the campaign trail.
The Kamala Harris website remains vague. There's bios for her and her running mate Tim Walz. There are events and donations. There's merch. But there are noticeably no policy stances. Media outlets are calling for more specifics, with the Washington Post's editorial board putting it bluntly. If she hopes to prevail, Ms. Harris needs to present her ideas. Republicans are seizing on the lack of a written plan.
She hasn't had a single proposal since she became the presidential nominee. She needs to answer questions about why she changed and when she changed.
Harris has offered glimpses during her campaign stops on immigration.
We know our immigration system is broken, and we know what it takes to fix it. Comprehensive reform that includes, yes, strong border security and an earned pathway to citizenship.
and for the working class.
And it is my promise to everyone here, when I am president, we will continue our fight for working families of America, including to raise the minimum wage and eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
Eliminating taxes on tips was first proposed by her opponent, Donald Trump. Her comments prompted a response on Trump's social media platform, with the former president saying in part, Kamala Harris has flip-flopped on virtually every policy she has supported and lived by for her entire career. The Trump Vance ticket has repeatedly hit Harris on her lack of interviews with the press.
She's not running a political campaign, she's running a movie. She only speaks to voters behind a teleprompter. Everything is scripted.
Harris is set to appear Thursday with President Joe Biden in a joint event on lowering costs. The vice president told reporters she's also revealing her official economic policy this week. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
A new poll shows, as you can see right here, voters trust Harris more than Trump on the economy. The Financial Times and University of Michigan survey of 1,000 voters shows Harris getting 42% support and Trump getting 41% in August. That's a big change from when President Biden was still running, and only 35% of voters said they trusted him more than Trump with the economy. Family members of the Uvalde victims say they're hurt all over again after the city released hundreds of records from the 2022 mass shooting over the weekend. The records include body camera footage and 911 calls from children in the school the day of the massacre. The shooting at Robb Elementary left 19 students and 2 teachers dead. Some family members of the victims say they don't understand why they weren't given the files before the public release.
It would have been nice if the city would have given us a heads up, but they haven't.
It opened up every single emotion all over again from that horrible day that we were sitting outside Robb.
The records release marks the end to the city's 2-year-long legal battle with nearly 24 news agencies who all sued for more information into the city's response. Nearly 400 law enforcement officers rushed to the scene but waited more than an hour before confronting the teenage shooter in a classroom. Crews are tearing down the church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, where a gunman killed 26 people in 2017. Churchgoers voted for its demolition, but some wanted to preserve the scene as a memorial to the victims. A lone gunman opened fire on the congregation after a domestic dispute with a family member who sometimes attended services there. A new church was completed in 2019. A hearing in the case against 4 former Memphis police officers charged in the beating death of Tyree Nichols was rescheduled today for late October. The men are charged by the state with second-degree murder in Nichols' 2023 death, as well as federal civil rights violations. All 4 men pleaded not guilty to both state and federal charges. The federal trial date is set for September 9th. Jury selection is happening today in the murder trial of a Las Vegas area politician. Clark County Public Administrator Robert Tellis was arrested in the 2022 death of investigative reporter Jeff Germain. Prosecutors say Tellis planned the attack because Germain wrote articles about workplace misconduct claimed against him. Tellis pleaded not guilty and faces life in prison if convicted. But before the trial starts, the judge will hear a final request to dismiss the case. The Biden administration's plan to extend federal funding to DACA recipients for higher education is getting pushback. The National Desk's Angela Brown breaks down the debate.
Actress Viola Davis, astronaut Jose Hernandez, and U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock, all with one thing in common. They are TRIO alumni, a federal program that helps low-income, first-generation, and other underserved students get through college. Inside Higher Ed says the federal government spent about $1.2 billion on TRIO programs in fiscal year 2023. In July, the Biden administration releasing this proposal to expand TRIO to undocumented students, saying, quote, expand eligibility to include students without immigration status who are enrolled in or seek to enroll in a high school right here in the U.S. Conservative college watchdog group Campus Reform disagrees.
The Biden-Harris administration's proposal would take resources away from law-abiding American citizens and instead give them to illegal immigrants.
But in states like Nevada, elected leaders say the proposed changes could improve lives, especially for dreamers, undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children. Democratic U.S. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto says it will make it easier for Nevada dreamers to succeed in college. The senator says in Nevada alone, there are 10,000 DACA recipients contributing to their communities and also paying taxes. And this July release, the White House says the proposed regulations will be formally published in the coming days, and the public will be invited to comment on the proposed regulations for a period of 30 days. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Coming up, the new climate record that 2024 is likely to break and the weather factors that are playing a role. Plus, the disturbing prediction about cancer rates among men in the next 2 decades, according to a new study. And what was racing through an Army Ranger's mind before he jumped into action to help a man from a burning car. We're back in 90 seconds. Tropical storm Ernesto has formed in the Atlantic, the 5th named storm of this hurricane season. It is moving west, and it is forecast to bring tropical storm conditions to the Leeward Islands tonight as well as tomorrow. Warnings are in place for several islands, including Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Ernesto is expected to turn north once it reaches Puerto Rico. It's very likely that 2024 will be the hottest year on record, according to NASA scientists. A new report shows July was a little warmer than the previous record set last year. The NASA lab director says the chances that 2024 will break the record range from 88% to 98%, depending on whether there's a La Nina event in the tropical Pacific. The Park Fire in California is taking a lot of resources to fight. Officials say about 6,500 firefighters have responded in Butte and Tehama counties, but according to Cal Fire officials, the fire is only about 38% contained, and it is spread to more than 429,000 acres. Cal Fire says crews set up essentially a small city for base camp.
They have laundry facilities set up. It takes the needs for them to take a shower at the end of their shift. We have those established here in the base camp. We need to have the ability to repair vehicles.
Cal Fire officials say the fire is touched into 4 counties. And developing now, Ukraine's president has confirmed for the first time his forces are operating inside Russia's Kursk region. Their military commander says Ukraine now controls more than 300 square miles of Russian territory. The ground incursion caught Russian forces by surprise last week. More than 120,000 civilians are evacuating as Russia sends in reinforcements. As a new ad from Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign portrays her as tough on the border, Republicans on Capitol Hill are digging into Harris's record from the last 3 years, as the National Desk Christine Frizzell reports.
The battle cry on the border remains a central tenet of the Trump campaign.
On day one, we will seal the border, stop the invasion, and send the illegal aliens back home.
Vice President Kamala Harris also now addressing the issue head on.
We know our immigration system is broken, and we know what it takes to fix it.
But critics want her record to speak for itself, since she was assigned the task of dealing with the root causes of migration.
I've asked her, the VP, today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle.
But from those countries alone, migrant encounters at the southern border have reached nearly 5 million under the Biden-Harris administration, with a new plan by House Republicans to investigate the cost.
This has had a huge impact on Medicaid because many of these people, when they cross the border, they get free health care. It costs money on the public school systems for these kids to be stuck in public schools that are already behind when they get here. So we want to know the cost, and we want to know exactly what Kamala Harris did.
The House Oversight Committee sending a letter to the head of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, requesting all documents and communications between U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the Executive Office of the Vice President related to the southwest border or illegal immigration. Democrats accuse Republicans on the House Oversight Committee of once again using their time and resources to investigate Donald Trump's chief rival, now Vice President Kamala Harris. For years, they focused their efforts on the man who was supposed to be his 2024 opponent, President Joe Biden, and what role he may have had, if any, in his son Hunter's business dealings.
We see the long arm, but little hands of Mr. Donald Trump, whose fingerprints are all over this hearing and this sham impeachment.
From Hunter Biden to the southern border, new efforts to find flaws in the Biden-Harris administration. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
Team USA gymnast Simone Biles and Suni Lee are supporting their teammate Jordan Chiles in the ongoing medal controversy. Chiles won a bronze medal for her floor exercise at the Paris Olympics, but the International Olympic Committee is saying Romanian gymnast Ana Barbosu will get it instead because the U.S.'s initial appeal about the score was filed late. The U.S. is appealing this latest decision, arguing it has video proof the inquiry was on time. Major changes to how realtors get paid are coming this week, with new rules taking effect on Saturday. It's all part of a $418 million settlement announced this year by the National Association of Realtors. Home sellers have traditionally had to pay a 5 or 6% commission, but now buyers' agents will have to sign an agreement with buyers up front, letting them know they have to pay their own realtors if a seller doesn't cover the cost. Health alert: cancer cases among men are expected to skyrocket worldwide in the next 2 decades. In a new study in the journal Cancer, Australian researchers forecast an 84% rise in cancer cases from 2022 to 2050, from 10 million to 19 million. They believe lung cancer will remain the top cause of cancer in men. They expect mesothelioma cases and prostate cancer deaths will see the biggest increases. Developing now, there is a move to take away the FDA's authority over food and give it to a brand new agency that would aggressively test for contaminants and work to keep products safe. A spotlight on America, national investigative correspondent Lisa Fletcher reveals in the wake of 2 infants dying from bacteria in their formula, heavy metals lingering in baby food, and hundreds of toddlers being poisoned by lead in tainted applesauce, the FDA's failure to take decisive action has some members of Congress looking for a new approach.
There is this failure on behalf of the FDA.
Because the FDA does not have our back.
It's something we've tracked for years.
FDA needs and must do more.
This is unacceptable, completely unacceptable.
The Food and Drug Administration, tasked with keeping our food safe, failing to take decisive action to protect public health. From neurotoxic heavy metals in baby food and applesauce to deadly bacterial outbreaks in infant formula and on lettuce that killed at least 8.
This is about saving lives. This is about saving lives.
things.
Representative Rosa DeLauro, who's been in Congress for more than 3 decades, has had enough. She's introduced legislation to remove the FDA's Food Authority and start fresh with a new agency, the Federal Food Administration.
How serious is the problem when you have to put forth legislation to dismantle part of an agency in order to create a new one to protect public health?
The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, has jurisdiction over drugs, tobacco, devices, and food. The food safety portion of their mission is often, secondary to everything else that they're doing.
We've long been told by experts that part of the problem is the FDA's unwillingness to disrupt the business of food, instead being too protective of industry status quo.
Is there a way in trying to create this new agency that you can somehow ensure that it doesn't have the kinds of ties to industry that have been a great concern of those observers of the FDA and its lack of action with industry when there's a problem?
The industry should not be driving the direction or the mission of the FDA. That should not be the case. There has to be a regimen, there has to be a protocol, there has to be requirements. Industry needs to be accountable.
New accountability in the form of an agency with the power to recall dangerous food items quickly and the funding and staffing to carry out inspections.
How realistic do you think it is that this is going to get traction and move forward and we may see the creation of this agency?
I never give up, and I never want to take no for an answer. One of the biggest issues with taking the food piece out of the FDA is turf, which is a very, very big problem in Washington, D.C. Everybody wants to hold on to as much as they can.
But when they're holding on to a system that's failed, DeLauro says she's happy to explain why things need to change.
No one wants to go into that grocery store, buy something, bring it home, and have their child either get sick or maybe die.
Despite years of asking, the FDA has never agreed to sit down and do an interview with us. The agency told us it does not comment on proposed legislation. It has promised, however, to set final limits for lead in baby food by the end of this year, although it has missed its own deadlines in the past. For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
We just received a copy of the law 2 days ago.
John Reed has been looking over the guidance from the state that was only released Tuesday night.
How are they going to enforce it? What are they going to do?
He's left with a lot of questions, like when the countdown actually begins.
And it has a section in there saying that if you and I are talking right now about you buying this firearm, okay, and you come in 3 days from now, you don't have the waiting period on you.
An agreement can be a handshake. It can be a call on the phone, it can be an email, it can be anything.
The guidance only recommends how sellers keep a record of that, but it's not expressly stated in the law. Reed feels this is all really just a way to target gun shows.
I want to work with the politicians. I want my community to be safer. I want to work with you, but when things like this happen, it makes you mad.
Take a look at this video from one of the ranger's friends, Kyle, who was driving by at the time of the accident. You can see the car engulfed in flames and several people moving the man to safety. One of those people helping was Joe, who can be seen in this picture. Washington State Patrol said the driver was the only one inside the car. Joe tells us when he noticed there wasn't anyone helping, he wanted to make sure that the person inside the car was okay.
When I looked in the car, somebody's son, brother, or dad, and immediately it's something that I thought that I would want somebody to do for somebody that I cared about.
WSP said the cause of the crash is still under investigation. Joe tells us he's grateful the man inside was okay.
A steady stream of people weave through Tanger National Harbor, taking advantage of outlet prices during Maryland's tax-free week.
There's like one stormtrooper on the back.
From Star Wars kicks
I need markers
to other back-to-school essentials, the state's 6% sales tax is nixed on clothing and shoes $100 or less per item, and on the first $40 of any backpack. It's something Mom Lisa Grolman plans for.
We usually try to come to the outlets every year right before back to school just to save a little bit of money on those back to school clothes. Any little bit helps these days.
Her savings and so many others all add up. The state accounts for this, and this year, officials estimate it'll add up to $6.6 million in lost revenue. That's up about $100,000 from last year's projection.
Coming up, people in Florida are tasked with killing as many pythons as they can. What's the purpose and how much money they can win? That's right after this. Florida Python Challenge is underway. Residents are tasked with killing as many Burmese pythons as they can from multiple locations in South Florida, including the Florida Everglades. The goal is to help protect the Everglades habitat by removing the invasive species. The competition began Friday, lasts until the 18th. You can win up to $25,000. Sounds about right after having to deal with that. That's going to do it for us for this edition of the National Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. I'll see you tonight at 10.